Now, I would love to introduce you to Marco Sala from Dentsu. Hey, Marco, how are you?
Karen, I'm really well. How are you?
Good, good, good. Nice to see you again, and I'm excited and looking forward to your presentation. So, over to you, Marco.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. So, just to introduce myself, my name is Marco Sala, and I am the integration lead at Dentsu International. I work as part of a team that manages an internal data platform covering integration, which I'm which I'm leading on, master data management, and transactional data for primarily for business intelligence analytics functions use cases. This capability has been built from scratch over the past 2 years and has delivered a significant core set of capabilities for Dentsu globally. Prior to working at Dentsu, I worked in various different data roles on large digital transformation programs across the UK, primarily in the UK sector. So in terms of Dentsu, just to introduce Dentsu International as an organization. Well, before that, we got the agenda. So jumping on the second slide quickly. So yeah, so what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to start introducing Dentsu as an organization. I will take you through the enterprise data hub and how SnapLogic play a part in that. We'll reflect on some of the key achievement key milestone that we've achieved through our iPass journey. We'll then look at what governance we put in place and why it is important. And then finally, looking at some of the example, giving you some, presenting some of the use case of how we have implemented governance in Dentsu. So just to introduce Dentsu as an organization, it is a large multinational media and digital marketing communications company. It has grown over the years, primarily through merger and acquisitions, by taking on hundreds of smaller companies and smaller brands. It is one of the largest media buying companies, and just to give you some numbers, it does operate in 150 different countries in the world and employs around 50,000 employees. So where are we in terms of the systems that Dentsu has? There are hundreds of them. Media, hundreds of systems, pretty much everywhere around the organization. Media systems which are needed for buying and managing media data. So media campaign, for example. We have people data. We have people systems, pretty much one per brand. Sales data are managed primarily by Salesforce, which is the standard, but again, there are plenty of other in all our brands company. Finance data, finance system, it varies, timesheet management and project management, many of them. So this leaves us essentially with a desperate set of siloed data. The data exists but it's duplicated in local, regional, and global systems. So what is the overall goal of Dentsu technology? Is to support global delivery of media services. And in order to do that, we have recognized the need for a central data platform for mastering, cleansing, governing data through engagement with business and optimization of business processes. So this brings us to one of the main topics of the presentation, the Enterprise Data Hub. So in the early view, it looks like this. So if I start from the bottom there are hundreds of source systems. We brought in SnapLogic to connect to this. So when we land the data, sorry, when those systems are connected, we then land the data into the data lake. This central function was organized in such a way that we have different storage accounts. We have storage account for timesheet, one for sale, one for people, one for finance, and one for media. We have also introduced the concept of file landing here. So a user could upload a file, or an application could write a file to the file landing zone. A pipeline will then move the data to the correct container there. The data by SnapLogic again is then pushed up to the enterprise data warehouse, where we have separate data marts. For example, for timesheet, we had around 60 different timesheet systems. The data has been standardized into a common data model, and it now resides into the common timesheet data mart. The main use case for this is the client profitability, for example. So once the data is in the data warehouse, it is then published to dashboard using tools such as Tableau or Power BI. Another key component of the Enterprise Data Hub is the master data management, which is supported by a tool called SameArkey, and is required for mastering and publishing of all our Dentsu master and reference data. I think that was, sorry, I missed one of the slides. So we have moved on a little bit from the original architecture of the Enterprise Data Hub. We got Enterprise Data Hub Mark II, which has a new components. So we're bringing in a central services on the left-hand side here to provide control, security, data governance, and sort of other central functions. We'll be introducing Azure Synapse node, which is required primarily to making sure that the data can be made available to consumers, to other consumers, such as users application and other data nodes. And finally, the integration data marts, which has already been built, which is fundamental for downstream system to access transform data. One of the key use cases for the integration data mart was to make sure the downstream application were consuming up-to-date HR data via a JML process. So joiners, movers, and leavers, which was all entirely built using SnapLogic. So moving on to the next slide. And I want to use this slide to reflect on the achievements, on the key milestones that have been achieved throughout the iPaaS journey. So what have been achieved? What have we achieved since we invested in SnapLogic? So if we start from the left-hand side, towards the end of 2019, we started a partnership with SnapLogic. It took us a few months to get up and running and in a position to deliver integrations. I can see number one, first pipeline delivery, March 2020. We didn't forget about governance. In fact, we started working on delivering good governance from day one. I will talk about governance in more detail in the next few slides. As the demand for integration grew, we also had to grow. We need to also satisfy that demand by having the team that was able to deliver a pace. So we have 11 team members. We have 1 director, 1 integration lead, which is myself. We have 7 data engineers. We have 1 Scrum Master doing the agile duties and 1 business analyst helping out with the business requirements. Another key milestones is the implementation of the federated model, which means that we have users that can build integration by themselves. We have local users, they are self-sufficient. So moving on to February 2021, there's 100 there, big milestone for us. 100 pipelines were in production. Something to mention is the node optimization, which is a piece of work that we deliver to essentially to increase the capacity on our SnapLogic platform. We started from, I think it was about 6 nodes across 3 environments to having 22, 24 nodes with 4 separate cloud plexi in production. So all separate. To this basically, we were able to separate out different workloads on separate plexes. And then just to give you a bit of an understanding of the scale of the operation here, 6 billion documents were processed back in March 2021. And finally, 100 plus, it's the number of integration that we still have in the backlog. So still a lot of work to do. There are more platform rationalization projects next year in 2020 and beyond. So moving on to the next topic, what is governance and why it's important in the context of integration delivery? So what I've done here, I've picked 5 governance measures here on the left-hand side that I think are critical for a successful implementation of an iPaaS. So first of all, clear processes to follow when requesting integration. New integration or change requests, whatever it is, that is absolutely fundamental, critical for clear business engagement. Secondly, we have built an integration catalog used primarily for planning and reporting. And we have built templated documentation. This is really, really helpful to making sure that the requirements are captured efficiently, and also we can have a better control over the build process. We have defined naming convention, absolutely critical here. We needed to put an order on everything we had to do here, right? So without well-defined naming convention, I think there will be total chaos. So total chaos. So that's absolutely fundamental. Moving on, SnapLogic organization, which I mentioned in the previous slide. We have organized the runtime environments by workloads here. So we have identified, we identify a SnapX where we're only running batch pipelines. We had 1 for low latency integration. So that's the Ultra Plex. And we have also 1 for PubSub type of integrations. We've also ring-fenced a Plex just for Workday integrations. This is because Workday integrations tend to be very So a heavy lifting integration. So we wanted to actually make sure that they had their own Plex, that they could be running, sometimes they're running for hours. And finally, having agreed upon delivery models with the business, whether it's agile, whether it's waterfall, what we call define, or whether it's ad hoc, as long as this is stipulated at the outset with the business, it's critical. So we talked about naming conventions. I want to just take you through how we went about setting them up. So at the top is an extract of our integration catalog. So in this example is an integration that take data from Workfront, its timesheet data, it just transform it and then writes it to something called client profitability database, which is a SQL database. So how do we come about with the reference name? So this is absolutely critical. So if I just look at the diagram there, I'm starting from the left-hand side. We start from integration platform, SL, with then a unique number for each integration. We then have source and destination. So in this instance, the source application is Workfront. Therefore, we use the WF as an abbreviation. We then move on to the brand. Is this application only used by one brand? In this case, yes. What's the name of the brand? iProspect, abbreviation IPS. And then is this brand only available within one country? Yes, that's the US in there. So as you can see on the left-hand side, there are a couple of screenshots showing an extract of two tables. One is the source system table, one in the brands table. So if the source system it already exists, if we already create an abbreviations, we just pull it out. Otherwise, we create a new records in there. And finally, we have the destination. So in a similar fashion, you have the destination application, the name, in this case, client profitability database, and then where it is located. In this instance is a global platform, so it is .g. So naming conventions are not only applied to in the way that we define the integration reference, but is also very, very important inside SnapLogic. So if we start from the top, the way that we name the project spaces. So two things there. First of all is we put a prefix that is the environment. This is a fail-safe feature that we put in there, because sometimes the developer doesn't realize in which environment is working on. So like make sure that you are in production there. Underscore, and then this is critical. We have how do we define project spaces? Is the destination, okay? You can see that is underlined, and project space in this image is Smart Recruiter, which means that all the projects within that project space will write to a system application called Smart Recruiters. Moving down to the name of each project there, that is exactly the same as logged in the catalog. Okay, so one integration, one project space. And then moving down into pipeline names, we also wanted to make sure that we were able to trace back an error, for example, that was caused by one pipeline back to that integration. And then we were able to quickly go and find all the necessary documentation related to the integration. This is why we have the reference number as at the beginning of each pipeline, which is then followed by the sequence number. in most of the cases, it will start from a 0-0, where you have the master pipeline that orchestrates all the flows, which is then be followed by O1, which means there is a child pipeline that is executed by the pipeline number 0, and so on and so forth. The second use case, second governance use case, what I'll take you through is the integration catalog. So what is the integration catalog? The integration catalog is a master list of all of our integration that they are available and published on a Confluence page. Integration are logged in here when they are requested, and their status changes from backlog to in progress when the developers is working on, and then become active when they are pushed to production, and they change the status to retire when they are decommissioned. So there are a number of attributes that we capture from the ref, which we discussed, the source, the destination. We capture the priority, how important is integration, how fast do we need to deliver. The businesses normally require supplies a completion date. We also have information such as the technical developer has built a pipeline, and then we're using also the catalog to track status, right? Is the documentation completed? How are we doing with UAT? Yes, is in progress. What's the build? Is completed, etc., etc. So a good thing about this catalog is that we can create views and publish those views to end users. So internal business can actually see what we are doing. As an example, you can see live integrations by data domain. We have 143 integrations that are live, and then you can see the timesheet integration are top in the chart with 56, followed by sales, 23, then finance, and so on. We are also able to actually look at how we are doing delivering this integration, and we can actually put in a timeline and look at how many we are delivering per week. Another example of one of the reports that we can pull out from this table is looking at resource utilization. So knowing who's working on which integration and how many integration our developers are actually working on at the same time. So moving on to our final use case is business engaged model. What does that mean? So during our journey, I must admit, we have struggled with lack of requirements from the business, lack of project management, lack of resources such as BAs or solution architect, you name it. So what do we do about it? I don't think the business is mature enough, so we had to come out with a clear model that they can follow. So we have come out with the define and the agile model. The define model is where we have a clear definition of what is required. It may appear waterfall, yeah, I would say very similar, but bear in mind that we operate in an agile way, in an iterative way. So we're still using sprint, and we deliver that way. On the other side, you have the agile model, which is it's more fluid and it doesn't commit to timescale. So it might sound the best approach to use for integration delivery, but it does require most ongoing business engagement. So this is a challenging piece of work, but we believe is kind of almost like the last piece of the puzzle that we need to complete here, just to make sure that those models are understood and are embedded in the business. And there's a final slide just to reflect on what I've covered today. So I took you through the Enterprise Data Hub and how SnapLogic play a key role in connecting all its components. We looked at what we've achieved in the last couple of years. I think we've achieved a lot, but believe me, there's exciting future ahead. There's still a lot that we need to do. We looked at why governance is important, and this is one of my recommendations, a suggestion. If you are starting up an iPaaS, make sure that you get it right from the start. They will definitely save you time later. And I took you through a couple of practical examples of how we implemented in Dentsu, and hopefully they're also helpful to you, and then you can apply that to your organization. And finally, looking at the challenge of agreeing business engagement model with the business. We've got the define approach, and then we've got the agile. We only have to make sure that this is embedded in the business. That was everything from me, Karen. I'll hand it back now.
Thank you so much, Marco, and thank you for sharing the data hub and the governance pieces. All right, so if you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. Right now, I do have some questions for you, Marco.
Okay.
So, all right, so in your data hub, can you walk us through how you would give data access to specific functions like marketing, sales, and finance?
Okay, yeah, so in terms of access to the data hub, we have different ways of controlling that. So access to the data warehouse, where we have the various data marts, is primarily role-based. It's actually down to row and columns, to what people can see. So is that really depending on your role? It's not attribute control, it's just role-based, okay? We also have access to the data lake, and that is controlled using service principle if you're programmatically connecting to it, or SaaS URL, which are URL that can be shared with users to access specific containers. And finally, something to bear in mind, we're using SnapLogic. So most of the connections that are made to the Enterprise Data Hub are controlled with SnapLogic connectors. So we're using SnapLogic accounts to authenticate that connectivity.
Got it. All right. And when you talk about governance, can you share with the audience how you started thinking about governance before you even started building out your very first integration pipeline through SnapLogic, and why is that important?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. I think it's critical. I would say more than important. We knew that we had to deliver a lot, so we started with already a backlog of things that we had to build. So we actually realized that we needed to do it properly. We needed to spend time defining the way that we wanted to build this platform, to make sure that it will be scalable and supportable going forward. So we started out with a very basic catalog, just say, right, okay, let's just capturing what we need to build over there. Let's start building, let's start creating templated documents, right? We have an integration template that we can use for in each integration. This is what we have. We've defined naming convention to create project spaces. A project is in SnapLogic. How we name accounts in SnapLogic. All the resources in SnapLogic have some naming convention behind it, right? So, and then we've matured this over time. We've added new fields to the data catalog. We've centralized the storage of, for example, credential for all the endpoints. We are all safely stored in Azure Key Vault, and so on and so forth.
Thanks. All right. Well, that's it for this session. It wraps it up really nicely. Thank you so much, Marco, for sharing with us your data hub at Dentsu and how you are thinking about governance, for the integrations. All right. Thank you so much, Marco.